penthouse was dead quiet, except for the hum of Harlem's streets sneaking through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Neon lights from 125th Street painted the room in streaks of pink and blue, bouncing off the silk sheets where Ila Quinn lay, buck naked, giggling like she'd lost her damn mind. Her curls fanned out on the pillow, a wild halo of black against the crisp white linen. The tequila was still buzzing in her veins, making the world soft and blurry. But her heart was pounding so loud she swore it could wake the whole city. Stupid. 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 Ila muttered, her voice slurring as she clutched the sheet to her chest. She wasn't supposed to be here, in some fancy-ass penthouse at the Apollo Hotel, sprawled out like she owned the place. This was Nia's fault. Nia, with her big laugh and bigger ideas, who dared her at the Soul Shack over shots of Patron. Find a random bed in the Apollo, lie there for an hour, and I'll cover your rent for a month, Nia had said, her eyes glinting with mischief. Ila, 3 drinks deep and still stinging from walking in on her ex. Devon, tongue deep in some girl's mouth 2 nights ago, had said yes. Because why the hell not? She was done playing it safe. The room smelled like money leather, cedar, a hint of champagne lingering in the air. Ila's dress, a cheap red thing she'd borrowed from Nia, was crumpled on a chair. She'd folded it neatly, even in her drunken haze, because that's who she was, the girl who kept it together, even when her world was falling apart. Harlem born and raised. Ila was 24 with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that saw too much. She was an artist, scraping by on freelance gigs and a scholarship to a design school downtown. Her mama, Eleanor, worked double shifts teaching music at a public school, and her daddy long gone before she hit double digits. Ila didn't do reckless, but tonight, with Devon's betrayal burning a hole in her chest, reckless felt like freedom. She closed her eyes, letting the mattress cradle her like a lover. 1 hour. She whispered, her laugh shaky. Just 1 dumb hour, and I'm out. The sheets were cool against her skin, and for a second, she felt like she belonged here, like she wasn't invisible. Then the door clicked open. Ila froze, her breath catching like a fish on a hook. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, crossed the hardwood floor. She squeezed her eyes shut, praying it was a maid or a drunk guest who'd wander out. But the air shifted, and she felt someone watching her. Her eyes snapped open, and there he was. Julian Wolf stood at the foot of the bed, a shadow cut from the neon glow. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his black hair mussed like he'd run his hands through it 100 times. His suit charcoal, tailored to perfection, hugged him like it was sewn onto his skin. But it was his eyes that hit her hardest gray, sharp, like they could cut through steel. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at her like she was a puzzle he didn't know how to solve. Who the hell are you? And why are you in my bed? His voice was low, smooth, like whiskey over ice, but there was an edge to it, like he was 1 second away from calling security. Ila bolted upright, yanking the sheet to cover herself. Her heart was a jackhammer, and her mouth went dry. Oh shit. I'm so sorry, she stammered, her words tripping over each other. I thought this place was empty. I didn't mean to. Empty? Julian raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms. The motion made his jacket pull tight across his chest, and Ila's brain, still foggy from tequila, registered that he was built like he could bench press her without breaking a sweat. You thought a penthouse in Harlem's fanciest hotel was just empty. I know. It's dumb. Ila's face burned, and she clutched the sheet tighter, like it could shield her from the humiliation It was a dare. Okay, my friend. She bet me to sneak in, lie here for an hour. I didn't think anyone lived here. I'll go. I swear Julian didn't budge. He tilted his head, studying her, not just her face, but the way her hands trembled, the way her voice cracked with panic. Most people would have yelled, kicked her out, or worse. But Julian Wolf wasn't most people. He was 36, a billionaire, who'd turned failing tech startups into empires. A man who moved through the world like he owned it, Chicago-born, Jewish, with a reputation for being untouchable, no scandals, no weaknesses, until now. A dare, he repeated, his lips twitching like he was fighting a smirk. You got balls, Harlem girl. I'll give you that. He stepped closer, his shoes clicking on the floor, and Ila's pulse spiked. But you don't just break into my place and expect to walk out without a story. Who dared you? Ila swallowed, her throat tight. My friend. Nia. It's stupid. I'm stupid. Can we just pretend this never happened? Too late. Julian's eyes locked on hers, and there was something in them. Curiosity. Maybe. Or something darker. You're in my bed. You owe me a story, and I'm a damn good listener. Ila's mind raced. She should run, grab her dress, and bolt. But there was something about him, something that made her stay. Maybe it was the way he didn't yell, didn't judge, just watched her like she was the only thing in the room. Or maybe it was the tequila talking. It's not a story, she said, her voice steadier now. It's a mistake. My ex screwed me over. I got drunk, and Nia thought it'd be funny to make me do something crazy. That's it. Julian nodded, like he was filing her words away. He moved to the armchair across from the bed, sitting down with the ease of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world. Ex. Huh. Sounds like a punk. Ila snorted, surprising herself. Yeah, you could say that. Caught him with some girl 2 nights ago. Guess I wasn't enough. His eyes flickered, and for a second, something raw passed through them. His loss, he said, almost too quiet to hear. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. So, what's your name? Ila, she said, hesitating. Ila Quinn. But everyone calls me Ila. Julian Wolf. He didn't offer a handshake, just held her gaze. And Ila, you're not invisible. Not tonight. Her breath hitched. How the hell did he know that's what she felt? She opened her mouth to say something, but the words died when he stood up, crossing the room to the window. The neon light caught the sharp line of his jaw, and Ila's stomach flipped. He was dangerous not in a violent way, but in the way that made you want to follow him into the dark. Get up, he said, not turning around. You're not staying in my bed unless you're planning to move in. Ila's face went hot, and she scrambled to her feet, clutching the sheet like a lifeline. I'm going! I'm going! She reached for her dress, but her foot caught on the rug, and she stumbled. Before she could hit the floor, Julian was there, his hand on her waist, steadying her. Time stopped. His touch was firm, warm through the thin sheet, and Ila's skin burned where his fingers pressed against her. The room was dark except for the neon glow, casting shadows across his face. His eyes were on hers, intense, unreadable, and his breath brushed her cheek, carrying the faint scent of sandalwood and whiskey. You're shaking, he murmured, his voice low enough to rumble through her. I'm not. Ila lied, but her voice betrayed her, trembling like her hands. She could feel the heat of him, the way his thumb grazed her hip, not possessive, but like he was testing the weight of her. The air between them crackled, thick with something neither of them could name. Outside, a saxophone wailed from a street performer, its notes curling into the room like smoke. "Trouble," Julian said, almost to himself, his eyes dropping to her lips for a split second. "You're gonna be trouble." Ila's heart was a drumbeat, and she wanted to pull away, but her body wouldn't listen. "You don't even know me," she whispered, but it sounded like a challenge. "I know enough." His hand lingered a moment longer, then he stepped back, breaking the spell. "Get dressed." "We're not done." Ila blinked, her brain catching up. "Done," I said. "I'm sorry, I'm leaving." "Okay." "Not yet." Julian turned, grabbing a glass from the bar cart and pouring himself a drink. "You broke into my place. Ila, you don't get to just walk out. Meet me tomorrow. 10 a.m. My office in Manhattan. We'll talk." "Talk." She pulled the dress over her head, her hands shaking as she smoothed it down. "About what? You gonna press charges or something?" He smirked, sipping his drink. "If I was, you'd be in cuffs already. I want to know why a girl like you ends up naked in a stranger's bed." "Call it curiosity." Ila stared at him, torn between fear and something else, something that felt like a spark catching fire. She should say no, run back to her cramped apartment, forget this ever happened. But there was something in his voice, something that made her want to know him, too. "Fine," she said, her chin lifting. "But don't expect me to spill my whole life story. Wouldn't dream of it." He raised his glass, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "See you tomorrow, Harlem girl." Ila grabbed her shoes and bolted for the door, her pulse still racing. The elevator ride down was a blur, the cool air of the lobby hitting her like a slap. She stepped onto 125th Street, the chaos of Harlem wrapping around her music, laughter, the smell of fried plantains from a food truck. She should feel humiliated, but instead, she felt alive, like she'd just danced with a storm and walked away unscathed. Or maybe not unscathed. Julian Wolf's eyes were burned into her mind, and she knew, deep down, that this wasn't over. What she didn't see was the security camera in the penthouse hallway, its red light blinking as it recorded her leaving. Someone, somewhere, was watching, back at the Soul Shack. An hour earlier. The night had been electric. The bar was packed, bodies swaying to a Kendrick Lamar track, the air thick with sweat and cheap perfume. Ila had been at the bar, her third shot of tequila burning her throat, when Naya leaned in, her braids swinging. "You gotta let loose, girl," Nia said, her voice loud over the music. "Devin's a clown. You're too fine to be crying over his sorry ass." "I'm not crying," Ila shot back, but her eyes were glassy, and Nia saw right through her. That's when the dare came up. Born from too many drinks and too much heartbreak. Nia pointed at the Apollo Hotel across the street, its glass facade glowing like a beacon. "Bet you won't sneak in there. Find an empty room, and chill like you own it." Ila laughed, the kind of laugh that comes when you've got nothing left to lose. "Bet you won't pay my rent when I do. Deal." Nia slapped the bar, grinning. 1 hour. Ila, don't punk out. Now. Standing on the street. Ila wondered what the hell she'd been thinking. But as she walked home, her sneakers slapping the pavement, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Julian Wolf wasn't just a name she'd heard it before, whispered in the news, tied to billion-dollar deals and a reputation colder than a Chicago winter. And she'd just spent 10 minutes in his bed, naked, trading words like they were equals. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Nia. "You do it." Spill Ila typed back, her fingers shaky. "You owe me rent." And a damn explanation. She didn't mention Julian. Not yet. As she disappeared into the Harlem night, the camera footage from the Apollo was already being downloaded, sent to an unknown number with a single message. She's the one. Ila Quinn stepped off the plane in Miami, her sneakers squeaking on the polished airport floor, and immediately felt like she'd walked into a different planet. The air was thick with humidity, smelling of salt and sunscreen, and the terminal buzzed with people in designer sunglasses and flip-flops that cost more than her rent. Her backpack, stuffed with a sketch pad and a change of clothes, felt like a neon sign screaming, "I don't belong here." But Julian Wolf's text from last night, "Meet me in Miami, Eden Rock, 8 p.m. Don't overthink it had been enough to get her on a red-eye flight, even if she was still questioning her sanity. Harlem was home, with its gritty pulse and familiar chaos. Miami. This was Julian's world, glossy, exclusive, and way out of her league. After that night in his penthouse, Ila hadn't slept right. His gray eyes, the way his hand grazed her waist, the low rumble of his voice calling her Harlem girl, it was all stuck in her head like a song she couldn't shake. She'd shown up at his Manhattan office the next morning, half expecting to be laughed out or arrested. Instead, he'd offered her coffee, asked about her art, and listened like she was the only person in the room. 2 hours later, he'd invited her to Miami for some finance conference he was headlining. "No pressure," he'd said, smirking. "Just thought you might like a change of scenery." Now, standing in the lobby of the Eden Rock Hotel, Ila felt like she'd bitten off more than she could chew. The place was a palace, marble floors, chandeliers dripping with crystals, and a bar that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. She tugged at her denim jacket, her white tank top clinging to her skin from the Miami heat. Her curls were pulled into a messy bun, and she hadn't bothered with makeup. Why would she? She wasn't trying to impress anyone. At least, that's what she told herself. Miss Quinn. A concierge in a crisp suit approached, his smile polite but curious. "Mr. Wolf is expecting you. This way." Ila followed, her stomach doing flips. The bar was packed with suits and dresses, the kind of crowd that screamed money. She spotted Julian before he saw her, leaning against the bar like he owned it. His navy suit was unbuttoned, his tie loose, and his hair was just messy enough to make her wonder if he'd been running his hands through it. He was talking to a woman tall, blonde, dripping in diamonds, her laugh sharp enough to cut glass. Ila's steps faltered. Who the hell is that? Julian's eyes found hers across the room, and the world narrowed. He excused himself, leaving the blonde mid-sentence, and crossed the bar in long strides. "You made it," he said, his voice low, like they were the only two people here. His gaze swept over her, lingering on her tank top, her ripped jeans, the way her backpack hung off one shoulder. "Didn't think you would?" "Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises," Ila shot back, trying to sound cool even as her heart raced. "What's this place, a damn spaceship?" He chuckled, a sound that did dangerous things to her insides. "Close enough. Come on, let's get you a drink." He led her to a corner booth, his hand brushing the small of her back for a split second. The touch was electric, and Ila fought the urge to lean into it. The blonde from earlier appeared like a shark circling prey, Julian. Darling, you didn't introduce me to your friend. Her voice was honey, but her eyes were ice, raking over Ila like she was something stuck to her shoe. She extended a manicured hand. Vanessa Pierce. And you are Ila didn't take the hand. Ila Quinn, she said, her chin lifting. And I'm not his friend. I'm just here for the free drinks. Vanessa's smile tightened, and Julian's lips twitched, like he was holding back a laugh. Ila's an artist, he said, his tone casual but firm. She's got more talent in her pinky than most people in this room. Charming, Vanessa purred, but her eyes said bitch. What kind of art? Graffiti murals? The words dripped with condescension, like Ila was some street kid tagging walls. Illustration, Ila said, her voice steady despite the heat creeping up her neck. Portraits, mostly. People's stories on paper. You wouldn't get it. Oh, I'm sure it's quaint. Vanessa turned to Julian, her hand grazing his arm. We should catch up later. Darling, alone. She sashayed off, leaving a cloud of Chanel and bad vibes. Ila rolled her eyes. What's her deal, ex-girlfriend? Something like that, Julian said. His tone clipped. He signaled the bartender for 2 whiskeys. Ignore her. She's just fishing for attention. Seems like she's fishing for you. Ila muttered. Taking the glass, he slid her way. The whiskey burned, grounding her. Why am I here, Julian? You don't even know me. He leaned closer, his elbow brushing hers on the table. I know you're not like them. He nodded at the crowd, all fake smiles and clinking glasses. You're real. Ila, that's rare. Her breath caught, and she looked away, focusing on the amber liquid in her glass. You're full of shit, she said, but there was no bite to it. His words hit too close, stirring something she wasn't ready to face. She'd spent her life feeling invisible too, black for the art world, too broke for the city, too quiet for the loudmouths in Harlem. But Julian saw her, and it scared the hell out of her. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it. A FaceTime call from Nia. Gimme a sec, she told Julian, stepping outside to the hotel's terrace. The Miami night was alive, reggaeton pulsing from a nearby club, palm trees swaying under strings of fairy lights. Nia's face popped up, her braids swinging as she leaned into the camera. Girl, you in Miami. Nia's voice was half laugh, half disbelief. With that rich dude, what the hell's going on? I don't know, Ila admitted, running a hand through her curls. He asked me to come, and I just did. It's crazy. Right. Crazy. It's insane. Nia's eyes narrowed. Look, Ila, you're my girl. But dudes like him, they chew up girls like us and spit us out. You're too good for his bullshit. He's not like that, Ila said. But her voice wavered. Was he? She barely knew him. Yet here she was, halfway across the country because of one night and a gut feeling. Nia sighed. Just watch your back. Okay, and don't let him make you feel small. You're Ila fucking Quinn. Ila laughed, the tension easing. Love you. Nia, love you too. Now go get that free champagne. Nia winked and hung up, and Ila turned to head back inside. But Julian was already there, leaning against the terrace railing, his silhouette sharp against the city lights. Everything okay? He asked, his voice soft, but probing. Yeah, just my friend checking I haven't lost my mind. Ila shoved her phone in her pocket, suddenly aware of how close he was. The ocean breeze carried his scent: sandalwood, whiskey, something uniquely him. She thinks I'm nuts for being here. She's not wrong, he said, a half-smile playing on his lips. This world's not for you. Ila, too many sharks. Then why'd you bring me? She stepped closer, her boldness surprising her. What's your game? Julian. No game. His eyes darkened, and he pushed off the railing, closing the gap between them. I saw you in my bed, scared but defiant, and I couldn't stop thinking about you. That's not a game. That's a problem. Her pulse spiked, and she swallowed hard. You're the problem, she said, but her voice was barely a whisper. The air between them was charged, like the moment before a storm. She could hear the distant thump of reggaeton, the crash of waves from South Beach, but all she felt was him, his heat, his intensity, the way his eyes traced her face like he was memorizing it. Let's walk, he said abruptly, like he needed to break the spell. He led her down to the beach, the sand cool under her sneakers. The moon hung low, casting a silver path across the water. They didn't talk for a while, just walked, the silence heavy with unspoken things. Ila's mind was a mess. Nia's warning, Vanessa's venom, her own doubts, but her body was traitorously aware of Julian beside her, his sleeve brushing her arm, his steps matching hers. They stopped near a cluster of palm trees, the fairy lights from the boardwalk flickering above. You don't fit here, Julian said, turning to face her. His voice was rough, like he was fighting something inside. But damn, you make me want to burn this whole place down just to keep you close. Ila's breath hitched, and before she could think, he was closer, his hand grazing her waist. Light, but deliberate. The moonlight caught the planes of his face, making his eyes glow like storm clouds. Her skin tingled where he touched, and she felt the pull of him, like gravity. Julian, she started, but her voice faltered as his thumb brushed her hip, sending a jolt through her. The waves crashed louder now, their rhythm matching her heartbeat. His breath was warm on her cheek, and she caught the faint salt of the ocean mixing with his scent. You're gonna ruin me, he murmured, his lips so close she could almost taste them. Her hands found his chest, fingers curling into his shirt, and for a second, she thought she'd fall into him, let the world disappear. But fear clawed at her, fear of what this meant, of who he was, of how fast she was falling. She stepped back, her chest heaving. I can't, she said, her voice shaky. Not yet. Julian's jaw tightened, but he nodded, his hand dropping. Fair enough, he said, but his eyes said he wasn't done chasing her. Let's get you back. They walked back to the hotel in silence, the tension between them a live wire. Ila's phone buzzed as they reached the lobby. A notification from Instagram, a photo of her and Julian on the beach, his hand on her waist, the caption reading, Billionaire's new toy. Julian Wolf, hat Miami Nights. Her stomach dropped. Who the hell had taken that? Before she could show Julian, a text popped up from an unknown number. You don't belong in his world. Back off. Ila's blood ran cold, and she glanced at Julian, who was watching her, his expression unreadable. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing. She lied, shoving her phone in her pocket. But as they stepped into the elevator, the weight of that message settled in her chest. Someone was watching, and they weren't happy. The Charleston night was heavy with rain, the kind that turned cobblestone streets into rivers and made the old southern mansions look like ghosts in the mist. Ila Quinn stood on the porch of a riverfront villa, her sneakers soaked, her denim jacket clinging to her shoulders. The air smelled of wet moss and magnolias, and the Ashley River churned below, its surface rippling under the downpour. She'd been in Charleston for 2 days, dragged here by Julian Wolf for some fancy charity auction at Battery Park. But she knew that wasn't the real reason. He wanted her close, and she was starting to think she wanted it too, even if it scared the hell out of her. Miami had been a wake-up call. That Instagram post, her and Julian on the beach, his hand on her waist, captioned like she was some gold digger, had gone viral, racking up thousands of likes and nasty comments. Who's this chick, Julian Wolf, slumming it? Then there was the anonymous text. Back off. Ila hadn't told Julian about it. Not yet. She didn't want to look weak, like she couldn't handle the heat of his world. But every time her phone buzzed, her stomach twisted, expecting another jab from the shadows. Julian had been different since Miami. Quieter, more careful, like he was walking a tightrope between pulling her closer and pushing her away. He'd rented this villa in Charleston, a sprawling place with creaky floors and chandeliers that flickered in the storm. They'd spent the first night talking over bourbon, her sketching on a napkin while he told stories about his Chicago days, none of them personal, just enough to keep her hooked. Ila was falling, and she hated it. She was Harlem, through and through proud, scrappy, rooted in jazz and struggle. Julian was a billionaire, a white guy from a world of penthouses and power plays. What the hell was she doing? You're gonna catch a cold out here. Julian's voice cut through the rain, low and rough. He stepped onto the porch, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. The storm had mussed his black hair, and his gray eyes caught the glow of the porch lanterns, making them look like liquid silver. Ila shrugged, leaning against the railing. I like the rain. Reminds me of home. When Mama would leave the windows open and let the whole apartment smell like a storm. She glanced at him, her curls dripping. You don't strike me as a rain guy. I'm not. He moved closer, the wood creaking under his boots. But you make it look good. She rolled her eyes, but her cheeks warmed. Save the charm. Wolf, I'm not one of your boardroom fangirls. He smirked, leaning beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him through the damp air. Never thought you were. That's why you're here. Ila's heart kicked up, but she kept her eyes on the river, watching the rain carve paths in the dark. Why am I here? Julian, you could have left me in Harlem. Let that night be a funny story. Instead, I'm halfway across the country, dodging your ex's shade and creepy texts. His jaw tightened. Texts. She cursed herself for letting it slip. It's nothing, she said quickly, waving it off. Just some troll messing with me after that Instagram post. Show me. His voice was hard now, the kind of tone that made people jump in boardrooms. When she hesitated, he stepped closer, his hand brushing her arm. Ila, show me. She sighed, pulling out her phone and opening the message. You don't belong in his world. Back off. Julian's face darkened as he read it, his fingers tightening on her phone. This isn't a troll, he said, his voice low. This is personal. Great, Ila muttered, snatching her phone back. So now I've got a stalker because I got drunk and climbed into your bed. Perfect. I'll handle it, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Nobody touches you. Ila, not while I'm around. Her stomach flipped, but she pushed it down. I don't need a bodyguard. Julian, I need answers. Why me? Why this? He didn't answer right away, just stared out at the rain, his hands gripping the railing. Finally, he spoke, his voice quieter, raw. You remind me of someone I lost. But you're not her. You're more. Ila's breath caught. Who, Rachel, he said, the name heavy, like it cost him to say it. My fiancée. She died 5 years ago. Car accident in Chicago. We fought that day. And I let her walk away angry. She never came back. The words hit Ila like a punch. She'd seen the pain in his eyes before, but now it was bare, bleeding. I'm sorry, she whispered, her hand twitching like she wanted to touch him, but didn't know how. Don't be. He turned to her, his face half lit by the lanterns. That bed you climbed into, I hadn't slept in it since her. It was a shrine to my guilt. Then you showed up, all fire and nerve, and you broke it open. You broke me open. Ila's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, anything, but the weight of his confession pinned her in place. The rain was louder now, a steady roar that drowned out the world. Before she could find words, a voice interrupted. Ila, Malik Carter, stepped onto the porch, his dreads damp, his paint-splattered jacket dripping. He was a Harlem boy, a street artist who'd been her friend since high school, always there with a smile and a blunt. He was in Charleston for the same charity auction, showcasing his murals. What you doing out here with him? Julian's posture stiffened, his eyes narrowing. And you are Malik, he said, squaring his shoulders. Ila's people. Who the hell are you to her? Ila stepped between them, her heart racing. Chill. Malik. Julian's. A friend. The word felt wrong, too small for whatever this was. Malik's eyes flicked to Julian, then back to Ila. A friend. Huh. You sure about that? Ila, 'cause I see you, the real you, not like this rich dude who's gonna hurt you. Enough, Ila snapped, her voice sharp. I'm not a kid. Malik, I can handle my own shit. Malik's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Aight, just looking out for you. He shot Julian a hard look before heading back inside, leaving a trail of wet footprints. Julian's silence was deafening. He's got a thing for you, he said finally, his voice tight. He's just protective, Ila said, but she wasn't sure. Malik had always been there, steady, safe. Julian was the opposite, a storm she couldn't predict. Why do you care? Because I do, he said, turning to face her fully. His eyes were fierce, like he was fighting a war inside. I don't know what this is, Ila, but I care, more than I should. Her pulse roared, louder than the rain. She wanted to run, to hide from the intensity of him, but her feet wouldn't move. The lanterns flickered, casting shadows across his face, and the air between them crackled. Your trouble, she said, echoing his words from that first night. Damn right, he murmured. Stepping closer, the rain was a curtain around them, shutting out the world. His hand found her waist, pulling her in, and Ila's breath hitched as his fingers pressed through her wet jacket, warm against her skin. His other hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek, wiping away a raindrop. I'm fucking terrified of this, he said, his voice raw, his breath hot on her lips. Good, Ila whispered, her hands fisting in his shirt. That makes two of us. He kissed her then, and it was like the storm broke inside her, His lips were hot, urgent, tasting of bourbon and rain. The kiss was deep, hungry, his tongue teasing hers in a way that made her knees weak. His hand slid to her lower back, pulling her flush against him, and she felt the hard planes of his chest, the thump of his heart matching hers. The rain roared, drowning out everything but the sound of their breaths, the soft rasp of his stubble against her skin. Her fingers tangled in his hair, and she pressed closer, lost in the heat of him, the way his mouth claimed hers like he'd been starving for it. Julian. She gasped when they broke apart, her lips tingling, her body buzzing. His forehead rested against hers, his breath ragged, and she felt his hands tremble, like he was holding himself back. "I'm not good at this," he said, his voice rough. "But I want you. Ila, more than I've wanted anything in years." She swallowed, her heart a mess of fear and want. "Then don't fuck it up," she said, half joking, half pleading. He laughed, a low, broken sound, and kissed her again, softer this time, like a promise. The rain kept falling, soaking them through, but neither cared. The lanterns swayed, their light dancing on the wet porch, and for a moment, it was just them. Two people caught in a moment too big to name. Inside, the charity auction was winding down, but Ila barely noticed. She and Julian stayed on the porch, talking in low voices, the rain a steady backdrop. He told her about Rachel, not everything, but enough. How they'd fought over his obsession with work. How he'd told her she didn't understand his world. How he'd never forgiven himself. Ila listened, her hand resting on his arm, and for the first time, she saw him not as a billionaire, but as a man carrying a wound that hadn't healed. Her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. A news alert. Julian Wolf's mystery woman, Harlem artist or opportunist. The article had photos from Miami. Grainy shots of her at the Eden Rock, and a new one from Charleston. Her and Julian at the auction. The byline was anonymous, but Ila's gut twisted. Vanessa. It had to be. "Son of a bitch," she muttered, showing Julian the screen. His face hardened, but before he could speak, he dropped another bomb. "Vanessa knew Rachel," he said, his voice low. "They were friends, close. She was there the night Rachel died, and she's never told me everything." Ila's blood ran cold. "You think she's got something to do with this?" "I don't know," he said, his eyes distant. "But I'm gonna find out." As the rain slowed to a drizzle, Ila felt the weight of it all, Julian's past, the media, the texts, Malik's warning. She looked at him, his shirt clinging to his shoulders, his eyes locked on her like she was his anchor. She didn't know if she could trust him. But one thing was clear. Whatever they'd started in that penthouse wasn't just a dare anymore. It was a fire, and it was burning them both. Miami was a fever dream, all neon and noise. The South Beach Carnival turning the streets into a pulsing, sweaty chaos. Ila Quinn stood on the balcony of Julian Wolf's penthouse at the Setai Hotel, the city glittering below like a broken disco ball. The air was thick with salt, and the thump of EDM from the festival, bass lines rattling her bones. Her hands gripped the railing, her nails digging into the metal, as she tried to breathe through the weight crushing her chest. The world was closing in, and she wasn't sure she could keep up. It had been 2 weeks since Charleston, since that rain-soaked kiss that turned her insides to fire, since Julian bared his soul about Rachel, his fiancée who died in a crash he still blamed himself for, since the news broke that Vanessa Pierce, Julian's venomous ex, might know more about that night than she'd let on. The headlines hadn't stopped since Julian Wolf's Harlem fling love or scandal, each one slicing into Ila like a paper cut. Her phone was a minefield of notifications, trolls calling her a gold digger, art school classmates whispering behind her back, even her mama, Eleanor, texting, "Baby, you sure about this man?" And then there were the anonymous messages, each one colder than the last. "You're nothing to him. Leave or regret it." Ila had tried to tough it out. She was Harlem, built from grit and jazz, not some fragile thing to be broken. But the pressure was relentless. She'd stopped going to classes, her sketch pad untouched for days. Every time she stepped outside, she felt eyes on her, cameras waiting to catch her slipping. Julian had been a rock, his legal team shutting down blogs, his voice steady when he told her, "I've got you." But even he was fraying. His board was circling, investors muttering about distractions. And Ila could see the strain in his eyes, the way his hands clenched when he thought she wasn't looking. Tonight was supposed to be a break. Julian had brought her back to Miami for the carnival, a chance to disappear into the crowd and forget the world. But the world didn't forget them. They'd been spotted at a rooftop party earlier, and within hours, a trashy talk show aired a segment with Vanessa, her smile sharp as a blade. Julian's lost his edge. She'd purred. This Harlem girl's just a phase, a hustler out for his cash. Ila had watched the clip in the penthouse, her stomach twisting. Julian's silence louder than the TV. Now, she stood alone on the balcony, her black crop top and ripped jeans feeling like armor that wasn't holding up. The door slid open behind her, and Julian stepped out. His presence a mix of comfort and chaos. He'd ditched his jacket, his white shirt untucked, the top buttons undone to show a sliver of chest. His hair was a mess, and his gray eyes were stormy, reflecting the neon lights below. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, rough from the whiskey he'd been sipping inside. Ila didn't turn, her gaze fixed on the ocean, where the horizon blurred into the night. "No," she said, her voice sharp. "I'm not okay. Julian, I'm fucking tired. Tired of being your headline, your scandal, your damn problem." He flinched, like she'd slapped him, but he didn't back down. "You're not a problem," he said, stepping closer. "You're the only thing keeping me sane." "Bullshit," she snapped, spinning to face him. Her curls bounced, catching the neon glow, and her eyes blazed. "Your board's ready to kick you out. Your investors are freaking, and I'm the one they're pointing at. I'm not worth your empire. Julian, I'm just a girl from Harlem who made a dumb bet." His jaw clenched, and he closed the gap, his hands caging her against the railing. "Don't say that," he growled, his voice low. "Dangerous. You're not just anything. You're Ila fucking Quinn, and you're worth more than all this shit combined." Her breath hitched, his words hitting her like a punch. He was close, too close, his heat seeping through her clothes, his scent whiskey, cedar, him flooding her senses. The EDM from the carnival pulsed below, a wild heartbeat that matched hers. She wanted to believe him, wanted to fall into him, but the fear was louder. "Then why does it feel like I'm breaking you?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "Every day, it's another article, another text, another piece of me they rip apart. I can't do this. You can," he said, his hands sliding to her waist, anchoring her. "We can, together, together." She laughed, bitter, pushing at his chest, but he didn't budge. "You live in penthouses. Julian, I live in a shoebox with 2 roommates and a leaky sink. Your ex is out there calling me a hustler on national TV, and I'm supposed to just smile and take it. Fuck that. Vanessa's a snake, he said, his voice hard. She's doing this because she can't stand seeing me with you. She's been after me since Rachel, and now she's playing dirty. Ila's eyes narrowed. What's her deal with Rachel? You said she was there that night. What aren't you telling me? Julian's face shuddered, and he stepped back, running a hand through his hair. I don't know everything, he said, his voice tight. Vanessa was at the bar where Rachel was before the crash. They were drinking, fighting about something. Vanessa never said what, but she's been holding it over me ever since, like a damn guillotine. Ila's stomach twisted. You think she had something to do with it? I don't know, he admitted, his eyes haunted. But I'm digging. My team's pulling records, talking to witnesses. If she's behind this or those texts, I'll bury her. The intensity in his voice sent a shiver down Ila's spine. But it wasn't enough. That's your fight. Julian, not mine. I didn't sign up for this war. You signed up the moment you climbed into my bed, he said, his voice softening, but there was an edge to it, like he was daring her to run. You could have walked away. Ila, you didn't. She glared at him, her hands fisting at her sides. Don't put that on me. You're the one who kept pulling me back, with your fancy trips and your damn eyes that make me forget who I am. His lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. My eyes. Shut up, she muttered. But the fight was draining out of her, replaced by something hotter, messier. The music from below swelled, a thumping beat that vibrated through the balcony floor. The neon lights painted Julian's face in shades of pink and blue, making him look like a dream she couldn't wake from. He stepped closer again, his hand cupping her face, his thumb tracing her jaw. I'm not letting you go, he said, his voice raw, not because of Vanessa, not because of the headlines, not because of anything. You're in me, Ila, and I'm not strong enough to fight it. Her heart stuttered, and she felt the pull of him, like gravity, like fate. You're gonna ruin me, she whispered, echoing his words from Charleston. But her hands were already on his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. Good, he murmured. And then he kissed her, hard and desperate, like he was drowning and she was air. The kiss was all heat, all need, his lips claiming hers with a hunger that stole her breath. His hands slid under her crop top, fingers splaying across her bare back, warm against her skin. She gasped into his mouth, her nails digging into his shoulders, and he pressed her against the railing, the metal cool against her spine. The EDM pulsed louder, a wild rhythm that matched their breaths, and the neon lights flashed, bathing them in electric color. His stubble grazed her cheek, his tongue teasing hers, and she felt the world tilt, like they were the only 2 people left in it. Julian, she breathed, her voice shaky as his lips moved to her neck, leaving a trail of fire. His hands gripped her hips, pulling her closer, and she felt the hard line of him, the way his body fit against hers like it was made to. The music was a heartbeat, the air thick with salt and desire. And for a moment, she forgot the headlines, the texts, the fear. There was only him, only this. I don't give a damn about the world, he said against her skin, his voice rough, his breath hot. Just you. Prove it, she challenged, her voice low, daring him. Her hands slid under his shirt, tracing the planes of his chest, and he groaned, a sound that sent a thrill through her. They stumbled back into the penthouse, the glass door sliding shut behind them, and he backed her against the sofa, his hands everywhere her waist, her hair, her face. The room was dark except for the neon glow seeping through the windows, casting shadows that danced across their skin. Her crop top hit the floor, and she didn't care, lost in the way his fingers traced her curves, reverent, like she was something holy. But then her phone buzzed, loud and insistent, shattering the haze. She froze, her breath ragged, and Julian pulled back, his eyes dark with want, but clouded with concern. "Ignore it," he said, his voice hoarse. She shook her head, reaching for her phone on the coffee table. Another text from the unknown number. "You're playing with fire. He's not what you think." Attached was a grainy photo of Julian and Vanessa, years ago. Her arms around him, his face blank but close to hers. Ila's heart sank, doubt creeping in like poison. "What is it?" Julian asked, his hand on her shoulder. She showed him the phone, her voice trembling. "Who is she to you?" "Julian." "Really?" His face hardened, but he didn't look away. "She's nothing," he said. "She was Rachel's friend. Not mine. Whatever she's doing, it's to hurt us." "Us?" Ila's voice broke. "There's no us if I can't trust you. I'm not your rebound, your project, your fucking charity case." "You're not," he said, his voice fierce, but she was already pulling away, grabbing her top, her jacket, her heart. "Ila, wait, I can't," she said, her eyes burning. "I love you, Julian, but I can't break you. And I can't let this break me." She left him standing there, the neon lights flashing across his face. His hands clenched like he was fighting not to follow. She took the elevator down, the carnival's music fading into a dull roar, and checked into a cheap motel on the edge of Miami. Her bag slung over her shoulder, she sat on the lumpy bed, her phone in her hand, and typed a note she'd leave for him later. "I love you, but I can't be your downfall." As she stared at the screen, another text came through. "Good choice. Now stay gone." Ila's blood ran cold, but this time, she didn't flinch. Whoever was watching, whatever they wanted, she wasn't running. Not yet. But she needed space. Time to figure out who she was without Julian's world swallowing her whole. Back in the penthouse, Julian stood alone, the city sprawling below, his phone buzzing with a call from his investigator. "We found something," the voice said. "Vanessa's been talking to someone about Rachel's crash, and it's not good." The Cape Cod sunset bled across the horizon, all pinks and purples, like one of Ila Quinn's sketches come to life. She sat on a weathered bench at First Encounter Beach, her sketch pad open on her lap. But the pencil hadn't moved in an hour. The ocean stretched out before her, waves whispering secrets against the shore, and the air was crisp, smelling of salt and pine. Her curls were loose, catching the breeze, and her oversized hoodie borrowed from her aunt's closet swallowed her frame. It had been 10 days since she'd left Julian in Miami, 10 days since she'd written that note, "I love you, but I can't be your downfall." 10 days of silence, of hiding in this quiet corner of Massachusetts, trying to find herself again. Ila had come to her Aunt Mara's house in Eastham to escape the noise, Miami's neon chaos, the headlines tearing her apart, the anonymous texts that kept coming, each one sharper than the last. The latest, sent 3 days ago, was burned into her mind. He's lying to you. Ask about Rachel's ring. She hadn't responded, hadn't told anyone, but the words gnawed at her, planting doubts about Julian, about everything. Harlem felt 1,000,000 miles away, and so did the girl who'd climbed into a billionaire's bed on a dare. That Ila was fearless, reckless. This Ila, she was a mess, sketching half-finished faces and wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. The media had moved on, mostly. A new scandal, some politician's affair, had pushed her and Julian off the front pages, but the damage lingered. Her art school inbox was full of concerned emails from professors, suggesting she take a break. Her classmates' whispers followed her even here, in her memories. And Nia, her ride or die, had been blowing up her phone, leaving voicemails that swung between worry and hype girl. You okay? Also, your boy's been making moves. Check the news. Ila hadn't checked. She couldn't bear to see Julian's name, to know he was back to his empire, untouchable, while she was falling apart. She traced a line on her sketch pad, the pencil shaking. The beach was empty except for a few seagulls, their cries sharp against the waves. Aunt Mara's house, a shingled cottage a mile up the road, was her safe haven. But even there, she felt exposed. She'd left Julian to protect him, to protect herself. But the ache in her chest hadn't eased. She loved him, God. She loved him, but love wasn't enough when the world was out for blood. A crunch of footsteps on the gravel path snapped her out of her thoughts. She looked up, and her heart stopped. Julian Wolf stood there. No suit, no tie, just a faded black hoodie and jeans, his hair messy from the wind, his gray eyes locked on hers, tired but fierce, like he'd crossed oceans to find her. He looked real, not like the billionaire from the headlines, but like a man who'd been running on fumes. Ila, he said, his voice rough, carrying over the waves. You're a hard woman to track down. Her sketchpad slipped to the bench, her hands trembling. How'd you find me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, his boots sinking into the sand. You left your aunt's address on a post-it in my office, back in Manhattan. Figured if you really wanted to disappear, you wouldn't have been so careless. He gave a half smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Or maybe you wanted me to come. She stood, her hoodie flapping in the breeze, and crossed her arms. Don't flatter yourself. Wolf, I needed space, not a rescue mission. I'm not here to rescue you, he said, stopping a few feet away. I'm here because I'm a selfish bastard. And I can't breathe without you. Her throat tightened, and she looked away, focusing on the waves to keep from falling apart. You shouldn't be here, she said. You're bored. Your investors, they're already on your ass because of me. I saw the news. They're calling you reckless, saying you're losing control. Fuck them, he said, his voice sharp. I walked away from a $50 million deal to find you. Let them call me whatever they want. Ila's eyes snapped to his, wide with shock. You did what you heard me. He took another step, closing the gap. Money's just numbers. Ila, you're the only thing that feels real. Her heart was a drum, loud and unsteady, and she shook her head, backing up. Don't do this, Julian. Don't make me the reason you throw it all away. I'm not worth it. Stop saying that. He growled, his hands fisting at his sides. You're worth everything. You think I give a damn about the board, about Vanessa's lies? I've been dead inside for 5 years. Ila, Rachel's gone. And I carried that guilt like a fucking chain. Then you showed up, all fire and heart, and you made me want to live again. Tears stung her eyes, and she blinked them back, her voice shaking. What about Rachel's ring? Julian froze, his face paling. What? The texts, she said, pulling out her phone and showing him the latest message. He's lying to you. Ask about Rachel's ring. Out. What's it mean? Julian, what are you hiding? He stared at the screen, his jaw tight, and for a moment, she thought he'd shut down. But then he spoke, his voice low, raw. Rachel's engagement ring was missing after the crash. Cops said it might have been stolen, but I never believed it. Vanessa was with her that night, at the bar. She swore she didn't know anything, but she's been dangling it over me ever since, like she's got a secret I can't touch. Ila's stomach twisted. You think she took it? I don't know, he said, his eyes dark. But my investigator's closing in. Vanessa's been sloppy, meeting with some shady fixer in Chicago. If she's behind the texts, the articles, any of it, I'll end her. The venom in his voice sent a chill through her. But it wasn't fear, it was the realization that he was fighting for her, for them, in a way she hadn't dared hope. Why didn't you tell me, she asked, her voice softer now. Because I didn't want you in the crossfire, he said, stepping closer. But I fucked up. Ila, I should have trusted you with all of it. I'm not good at this letting people in. But I'm trying. For you. She looked at him. Really looked. And saw the man beneath the billionaire tired. Broken. But standing here. Bearing his soul. The sunset was fading, casting a golden glow across his face, and the waves were a steady rhythm, grounding her. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I love you, Julian, but I'm scared we're gonna crash and burn. So am I, he said, his voice raw, but I'd rather burn with you than live without you. Her breath caught. And before she could stop herself, she closed the distance, her hands fisting in his hoodie. He pulled her in, his arms wrapping around her, and they stood there, holding each other as the ocean sang. The world felt far away, the headlines, the texts, the doubts fading into the salt air. But Ila knew they couldn't stay like this forever. Come with me, Julian said, pulling back just enough to look at her. There's something I need to show you. He led her down the beach, the sand cool under her sneakers, to a secluded cove where the rocks formed a natural shelter. The sunset was a thin line now, the sky deepening to indigo, and the waves crashed harder, their spray misting her skin. Julian stopped, turning to face her, his hands cupping her face. Ila, he said, his voice low. I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever. Her heart raced, and she felt the pull of him, stronger than ever. Then hold on tight, she said, her voice a challenge. 'Cause I'm a damn mess. He laughed, a sound that warmed her from the inside. And then he kissed her, slow at first, like he was savoring her. His lips were warm, tasting of salt and him, and his hands slid under her hoodie, fingers grazing her bare waist. The touch sent a shiver through her, and she pressed closer, her hands tangling in his hair. The waves roared, their rhythm matching her pulse, and the fading light painted their skin in gold. His stubble scraped her cheek, his breath hot against her neck as he kissed a path to her collarbone, each touch igniting her like a spark. "Julian," she whispered, her voice trembling with want. His hands tightened on her hips, pulling her against him, and she felt the heat of him, the way his body fit hers like a puzzle piece. The rocks shielded them from the world, and for a moment, it was just them. Just this, his lips on her skin, her fingers tracing his jaw, the ocean song wrapping around them. Her hoodie fell to the sand, and she didn't care, lost in the way his hands moved, reverent, like she was the only thing that mattered. "I've got you," he murmured, his voice rough, his forehead resting against hers. Their breaths mingled, fast and uneven, and she felt his heart pounding under her palm, as wild as hers. The moment wasn't just desire, it was trust, a promise forged in the chaos they'd survived. They pulled back, reluctantly, the night air cooling their skin. Julian's eyes were bright, his smile soft. "Come back to Harlem with me," he said. "We'll face it together, the media. Vanessa, all of it. No more running." Ila hesitated, the weight of his words settling in. She wanted to say yes, to dive back into his world, but the texts, the ring, the secrets, they lingered like shadows. "On one condition," she said, her voice steady. "No more hiding shit. If we're doing this, we're all in." "Deal," he said, his hand squeezing hers. All in. As they walked back to the cottage, hand in hand, Ila's phone buzzed again. She ignored it, but the unease lingered. Later, alone in her room, she checked the message. "You didn't listen. The ring's just the start." Attached was a photo, a blurry shot of a diamond ring on a velvet cloth. Time-stamped the night of Rachel's crash. Ila's blood ran cold. Whoever was watching wasn't done, and they were closer than she'd thought. Back in Miami, Julian's investigator sat in a dimly lit office, staring at a file. "We've got a lead," he told his partner. "Vanessa's fixer. He's talking, and it's bigger than we thought." Harlem was alive, the way it always was. A heartbeat of jazz, streetlights, and dreams that refused to die. Ila Quinn stood in the middle of the community center on 125th Street, her hands trembling as she adjusted a framed sketch on the wall. The room buzzed with people artists, locals, even a few reporters who'd sniffed out the story. Tonight was her first art show, a collection of portraits inspired by Harlem's soul, her mama's hands on a piano, Nia's laugh mid-song, the old man selling sweet potatoes from a cart. But the centerpiece, the one everyone whispered about, was a sketch of Julian Wolf, his face half in shadow, his eyes burning with something unspoken. Ila had poured her heart into it. And now, under the fluorescent lights, she felt exposed, like she'd hung her soul on the wall for the world to judge. It had been 3 weeks since Cape Cod, since she and Julian stood on that beach, his arms around her, promising to face the storm together. They'd come back to Harlem as a team, determined to shut down the noise, Vanessa's lies, the media's claws, the anonymous texts that kept coming, each one a dagger. The ring's just the start. You'll see. Ila had shown Julian the photo of Rachel's ring, the timestamp tying it to the night of her crash. And he'd gone quiet, his face a mask of fury and guilt. His investigator was closing in, piecing together Vanessa's moves, but the truth was still a shadow, just out of reach. The media hadn't let up. If anything, they'd gotten hungrier, splashing Ila's name across blogs and talk shows, Harlem artist seduces billionaire love or hustle. Her classmates had stopped talking to her. Her professors had suggested a leave of absence, and even her mama, Eleanor, had pulled her aside. Her voice soft but firm. "Baby, you sure this man's worth the fire?" Ila wasn't sure of anything, except that Julian made her feel seen, alive, in a way she'd never known, and she wasn't about to let the world take that from her. Julian had been relentless, his legal team crushing blogs that crossed the line, his publicist spinning the narrative to focus on Ila's art. He'd funded this show, not as a flex, but because he believed in her. "Your work deserves this," he'd said, his hand on hers, his eyes steady. "Let them see who you are." So here she was, in a black dress that hugged her curves, her curls loose and wild, ready to show Harlem and the world that she was more than a headline. The crowd parted, and Julian walked in, his presence like a match in a dark room. He ditched the suit for a black button-down and jeans, but he still carried that aura, the kind that made people turn and stare. His gray eyes found hers, and he smiled, a private thing that warmed her from the inside. "You did it," he said, stopping beside her, his voice low over the hum of voices. "This place is yours tonight. Not without you," she said, her hand brushing his. "You didn't have to do all this." "Yeah, I did." He leaned closer, his breath warm on her ear. "You're my reason, Ila. Always will be." Her heart skipped, but before she could respond, Nia bounded over, her braids swinging, her grin wide. "Girl, this is fire," she said, pulling Ila into a hug. "You got Harlem proud tonight, even if you're shacking up with Mr. Moneybags here." She shot Julian a playful glare, but there was warmth in it. "Careful, Nia," Julian said, smirking. "I might start liking you. Keep dreaming." "Rich boy," Nia quipped, but she squeezed Ila's arm before disappearing into the crowd. The night was a blur, handshakes, compliments, a few sneaky photographers Julian's security escorted out. But the real moment came when Ila stepped to the mic, her sketch of Julian behind her, glowing under a spotlight. The room quieted, and she felt every eye on her, heavy, but not crushing. "This show's for Harlem," she said, her voice steady, "for the people who raised me, who taught me to see beauty in the struggle. These sketches, they're my heart, my home, and I'm not letting anyone take that from me." The crowd erupted, applause rolling like thunder, but Ila's eyes were on Julian. He stood at the back, his face soft, proud. And something else, something that made her want to run to him. But then a reporter shouted, "Ms. Quinn, what about Julian Wolf? Is he your muse or your meal ticket?" The room went still, and Ila's blood boiled. She gripped the mic, her voice sharp. "Julian's my partner, not my bank. Next question." The crowd murmured, some clapping, others whispering. But Julian's smile was all she needed. He pushed through to the front, taking the mic from her with a nod. "My turn," he said, his voice calm but commanding. The room hushed again, every ear on him. "Ila Quinn's not a scandal. She's not a fling. She's the truth, the kind of truth that makes you want to be better. I've spent years building an empire, but none of it means shit without her. So if you're here to dig for dirt, you're wasting your time. This is her night, and I'm just lucky to be in it." The room exploded, cheers and whistles drowning out the few grumbles. Ila's eyes burned, and she grabbed his hand, squeezing hard. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered as they stepped off the stage. "Yeah, I did," he said, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "You're mine, Ila, and I'm done hiding it." They slipped into a back room, away from the crowd, the community center's old walls muffling the noise. The air was warm, smelling of paint and history, and a single window let in the glow of Harlem's streetlights, casting stripes across the floor. Ila turned to him, her heart racing, and saw the same fire in his eyes that she'd felt since that first night. "You meant that," she said, her voice soft. "Out there. You meant every word, every damn one," he said, stepping closer. His hands found her waist, pulling her in, and the world shrank to just them. "I love you, Ila, not because you ended up in my bed, but because you make me want to be a man who deserves you." Her breath caught, and she stood on her toes, kissing him, slow and deep, like she could pour everything into it, her fear, her hope, her heart. His lips were warm, tasting of whiskey and him, and his hands slid up her back, fingers tangling in her curls. The streetlights painted their skin in gold, and the faint hum of a soul track from the main room, Aretha Franklin, maybe wrapped around them like a vow. Her dress shifted as he pulled her closer, his hands tracing her curves, reverent, like he was memorizing her. She gasped when his lips found her neck, his stubble grazing her skin, sending sparks through her. "Julian," she murmured, her hands under his shirt, feeling the heat of his chest, the steady thump of his heart. The room was a cocoon, the music a pulse, and she felt him everywhere, his breath on her ear, his fingers on her hips, his love in the way he held her like she was everything. They sank onto an old couch, her legs across his lap, and for a moment, they just stayed there, tangled, breathing each other in. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered, her forehead against his. "But we've got shit to figure out." He laughed, a low rumble. "Yeah, we do. Starting with Vanessa." The name was a cold splash, but Ila nodded. "Your investigator, what did he find?" Julian's face hardened, but he didn't pull away. Vanessa's fixer flipped. "He's got proof she was at the bar with Rachel the night she died. They fought something about me, about the ring. He's got texts, too, tying her to the blogs that went after you. She's done. Ila, my team's building a case." Ila's stomach twisted. "And the ring. Still looking," he said, his voice tight. "But we're close. Whatever she's hiding, we'll find it." Before Ila could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her heart sinking at the unknown number. The message was short. "You think you've won. Check the news." Attached was a link to a blog post, already trending. Vanessa Pierce alleges affair with Julian Wolf during Rachel's engagement. The article claimed Vanessa and Julian had been involved before Rachel's death, with sources hinting at a cover-up. Ila's hand shook, and she showed Julian the screen. His face went pale, then red with fury. "It's a lie," he said, his voice deadly calm. "I never touched her. She's desperate, Ila. This is her last shot. Then we fight," Ila said, her voice steady despite the fear. "Together." He nodded, pulling her close, his lips brushing her forehead. "Together." The show ended late, the crowd spilling onto 125th Street, Harlem's pulse unbroken. Ila and Julian stepped outside, hand in hand, the night air cool against their skin. The community center's neon sign flickered, and a street performer played a saxophone, its notes curling into the sky. Ila looked at Julian, his face lit by the city, and smiled. "We started with a dumb bet," she said, her voice soft. "Now look at us." "Best bet I never made," he said, kissing her shoulder, his smile warm. "This is just the start." Harlem girl. They walked toward his car, the city humming around them, but Ila's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, expecting another taunt. Instead, it was a photo, a close-up of Rachel's ring, glinting on a chain, with a single word, "Soon." Her blood ran cold, and she showed Julian, whose face darkened. "Game's not over," he said, his voice low. "Dangerous. But we're ready." As they drove into the night, Harlem fading in the rear view, Ila leaned against him, her hand in his. They'd survived the noise, the lies, the fire, but the ring, Vanessa, the truth, it was still out there, waiting, and Ila knew, deep down, that their story was far from done. Across town, in a dimly lit office, Julian's investigator hung up the phone, his face grim. "We've got a problem," he told his partner. "The fixer's gone dark, and someone else is pulling strings, someone with more power than Vanessa." "Yo, what's next for Ila and Julian? Is Vanessa the real threat, or is something bigger coming? Smash that subscribe button and drop a comment with your theories. This Harlem fire's burning hotter than ever, and you don't want to miss what's coming."